I had 2 or 3 weeks worth of really deep playing on the keyboard, and speaking from my experience as a keyboard player, what I noticed the most was that when you play it, it feels really solid like a piano, or in some cases actually more solid than some pianos that I've played on. And I think that's down to the build of the stand. It's made of solid pieces of wood, unlike most standard keyboard stands that you get, which have this weird kind of X shape. It's a bit of a tried and true method that's maybe not the best. And the pedals are really incredible because they really just sit in place, like on a piano. I have a lot of trouble with pedals kind of walking away when you play them on an electric piano or a digital piano. The cool thing about this is it has quite a minimalist setup on top of the actual keyboard. Everything that you can access in here to modify the sound or to play audio back is in the app as well. This is CMS, Casio Music Space, which connects to all Casio music products. What you can do from here is basically everything in the menu with some other features as well. You could use this kind of on the stand instead of going through the menus, which might be cool for when you're trying to perfect a new registration or a new patch. And you can also use it as a teaching tool. You can look at scores. You can use this piano roll viewer, the music player, which is if you've got music stored on your device and you want to use the keyboard as a Bluetooth speaker, which is actually kind of useful. It's got this live concert simulator, which is kind of groovy. It reacts to what you're playing. The piano remote controller, you can control the metronome. There's a mixer here where you can choose your effects for all the splits and things like that. If you've plugged in a microphone, you can put effects on that too. So yeah, the app is really useful as well. And that combined with the new sort of innovations in the touch, even though it has quite a short pivot length, has 2 sensors, and it really just combines into quite a realistic feeling piano that's fun to play and inspiring to play.
Hello. I can't quite believe I'm here because I came in last night it took me 12 hours to get from Canberra to here, would you believe? And I came in on this bumpy little plane to which they came on the radio 4 times to said, don't freak out, it's just the weather. So, and I came in the dark and it's not a huge amount of lights. Drove into the hotel. I woke up this morning going, I have no idea where I am. So it was very exciting to see this morning. I was meant to be here. I think we talked about me coming in 2020. Yeah, look what happened there. And so it's very, very nice to be here. Can I just see the audience a tiny bit? I don't know if we can bring up the audience a little bit. I just need to see their faces. The whites of their eyes would be good. Yay, there we go. Cool. All right. I need to know who's in here. Who's an instrumental teacher? Primarily. I know we all do lots of things. Who is a classroom teacher? Aha, excellent. Who is an ensemble leader somewhere along the way? Yes, and some of you are just going, I'm just going to leave my hand up. Who teaches little ones, early childhood, 8 and below? Good. Who teaches sort of what I would call primary? Am I using the right word? So 5-year-olds to 12-year-olds? Great. Who's teaching the uglier ones, 12 to 18? Yeah. Anyone teaching the really ugly ones, 18 and above? There we go. Excellent. Is anyone, so music therapy? I've already met a music therapist today. Yeah, he's up the back of me, pick me. Good. Anyone doing music psychology, music intervention? Have I missed anything? Anyone doing something really special? What are you doing?
Safer Spaces and music education.
Explain that to me.
There's been an increasing number of reports in the media about sexual harm that's occurred within music education.
Oh, okay, right. I heard the Safer Spaces mentioned. I was like, oh, I want to know what that is. Fantastic, good.
We'll learn more about it tomorrow.
Oh, I wish I was here. I got 12 hours going back. I had a hand over here. Someone else doing something different. Yes?
Leading a prison choir in theory.
Oh my God, let's talk. Fantastic. A prison choir for juveniles, for adults, for both? Adults. Men, women? Men. Okay. Yes? Go. Oh, I thought that was like an invitation.
We dance with the 8 core movements that we use when we're out of the womb on the ground all the way up, so it switches on the neuro.
Great. Awesome. You and I definitely should talk. There'll be lots in here. Okay, good. All right, other special things, different things? No? Okay. Not that, being a classroom teacher of ugly teenagers is not a special thing. Yes, at the back.
We're researching First Nations music as a determinant of health.
How are you measuring health?
Through how people's own interpretation of health, wellbeing.
Self-reporting, yeah. Cool. In fact, I say that from a researcher's point of view. It's like, I definitely want to know about the design. Excellent. Oh my God, how much fun. Okay, let me introduce me. Has anyone ever heard of me before? If you haven't, that's totally okay. Okay, good. That's kind of all right. I am a music teacher. I am still a practicing music teacher, and I always say that because a couple of reasons. One is I'm still learning my craft, and I believe it truly is a craft. I am still within schools, which is really, really important to me to feed my soul and to feed my learning. I do other stuff as well. I have been a researcher, and I am still a researcher. So I did 12 years in tertiary education. I did it as a full-time job, and then I did a 0.5 job being a music teacher in the mornings and the afternoons. It's not a good idea. Don't do it. If anyone says it's a great idea, don't do it. But I worked in tertiary education, I worked in teacher training. So training the next generation of teachers is incredibly important to me as well. I am a trained clarinet player. I had that whole dream of being a classical person in an orchestra, get your one plum position and stay there till you die kind of thing. And I got to my third year of my 4-year degree and I went, no, that's not the life for me. Because I didn't want to be in a windowless room for another 10 years practicing to try and get that job that I would die in. So, no offence to anyone who's an orchestral player here. Sorry, but it just wasn't my gig. And mainly because I could see myself doing so many other things. So in true serendipitous style, I finished my 4-year degree because I'm stubborn and I had convinced my parents to let me do a music performance degree, so I kind of had to see it through. And then my parents, my mum in particular, who was a primary school teacher of reading, that'll come in later, she said, well, why don't you go and do a teaching degree and be a teacher till you decide what you want to do. So I went, okay. So I went and did that. I still remember third year, it was a 1-year degree at that point. Do you have a 1-year degree or a 2-year degree here? One after you've done a music? Okay, yeah. We've now got a 2-year degree, and it's one of the main reasons why a whole bunch of people are not becoming teachers, because they can't not work for 2 years. So it's a really big issue for us. But it was a 1-year degree, and I still remember it was third week in. I was in the most boring lecture in history, given by a person who hadn't been in a classroom for 35 years. I know. But I had a godlike moment where I feel like the whole roof went off and the light came down from the sky and I heard the choir going, la. And I went, oh my God, this is exactly what I should do with my life. I should be a music teacher. And I have not looked back, and it's got the singing and the light has just got bigger and bigger every single day. So I love being a music teacher, and it is the most incredible profession in the world. Thank you. I was going to say, can I get an amen? What then happened is I taught funny we're at a boys' college, because I taught in an all-boys school for 10 years. I was the one of 8 female members of staff out of 200, and I was the youngest by 30 years in an all-boys school, in an all-boys secondary school. So out of the... I learnt definitely how to be a teacher and how to stop a group of year 8s at 10 paces and make them cry, all at the same time. It's a life skill. But what was interesting is I kind of couldn't get anywhere in the school. I wanted to do more, I wanted to try different things. And that's when I got sent this thing about going to teaching at university, which at the time you didn't need a PhD to do. I had a master's degree. So I went and did that, kept being a teacher, and part of that was doing a PhD, and sort of the rules changed and they went, no, you now need to have a PhD to teach in university. And so if you were in university, they said, as long as you've started, that's good. And so I went, well, I've always wanted to do it. I didn't quite want to do it yet, but I have to do it to keep my job, so let's do that. So I got 2 pieces of advice. The first one was, do something that everyone else has done and do it as quickly as possible. And then the second piece of advice was, do something you're going to love at the end as much as you did at the beginning. And the musician in me went, I'll take the second one, thanks, because the first one sounds really boring and soul-destroying. So I found this field of research, which is neuromusical research. Neuro meaning brain, musical meaning music. And I made up this title, I'm a neuromusical educator. I know, if you ever get to do it once in your life, make up your own title, it's so much fun. I did it because I get into like a taxi or a lift and someone would go, what do you do? And I would like blah, 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 blah. I'd fumble over my words and they'd go out going, A, she's crazy, and B, I don't know what she does. So I had to come up with something. So now I say neuromusical educator and they go, oh, and they don't ask me anything else. It's quite good. Anyway, I found this field of research and I went, oh, that's exciting, let's learn more about that. The main reason was, honestly, and remember, I'm teaching teenage boys and pre-service teachers who are usually between the ages of 18 and 24. So a bit like teenage boys, but with no supervision. And what I thought is, if I understood what was happening in their brains when they learnt music, maybe I could be a better teacher. It was as simple as that. What I found is a field of research that I think can assist us to transform our industry. And I call it an industry because it's something that helps other people understand the value of the work we do and what we're doing. It does also help us understand the work we do. One of the best things is, have all of you got, have you got things that you do, like techniques you do, and you go, I know this is going to work. And every single time it does, right? Yeah, but you have no idea why. This research filled that gap in, particularly for me. To go, I know that if I teach a certain student who's displaying these musical learning behaviours, if I do this with them, then it will help them move on to the next step. But what it's helped me understand is why that thing works. And I think for me as a teacher, that's really powerful. I also think this research opens doors which are currently closed to us. And I've got 2 more sessions today, so if I don't cover anything today, come to the next one. The next one's on music and the brain. The next one is also, and the one after that is also about what we're doing in Australia, how we're using the research. And what I'm excited about is it's not just in Australia now, it's being used all over the world to inform policy, to change politicians' minds, to get more money, to get more kids playing instruments, all of those different things. So it's only taken 5 years, but we've got there. We had COVID in the middle. But what I thought I'd do this morning is take the theme of the conference, which is connecting within and across. And every time I speak, it's different. As you can tell, I'm not reading off anything. One of those reasons is I have some form of dyslexia. So when I read, hear this sound in your head, when I read off paper, I sound like a 7-year-old. I sound really stilted and I really, really struggle. I also get incredibly nervous and I sweat like crazy. So part of what music did for me, and I think, honestly, while I want to be a better music teacher, I actually want to answer one question, which is, as a child who couldn't read until she was 9, and I was hiding, I was so good. I was so good at hiding I couldn't read. And then I was given a musical instrument, I was given a clarinet, and I was taught how to read music properly. And after that, I could read. I'm trying to answer that question. Did learning music fundamentally change the course of my life? And if that is so, can it fundamentally change the course of a lot of kids' lives? So that's what I'm trying to answer. But every time I do it, I take a theme and I go, let your mind run with it and let's see where we go. Are you happy to come with me? Yes? Good, fantastic. Also, I'm the worst person when I'm like sitting listening to PD, I'm a terrible critic. So I totally get it if you guys are going, yeah, right, whatever, moving on to the next bit. It's okay. But I'm also not into formal keynotes. I'm not reading anything. This is all about you and me being here for you. If you've got a question, can you do something for me? Can you channel your inner 6-year-old who has no stopping mechanism between their brain and their mouth? You can either put your hand up, you can stand up, you can clap, you can yell out, I don't mind. Woo-hoo! Good, see? You're great. Thanks, excellent. There's always one. Let me guess, drummer or trumpet player? No, singer. Okay, you're out of the box, I'm quite liking you. All right. If you have a question or a thought, just yell it out. It actually helps me. It helps me know where your heads are at, what you're interested in, and how I can answer things. I can talk legs off chairs. So if you have, we can go wherever you want to today. If we don't get past slide 2, I don't care. Are we okay with that? Great. I'm not positive my clicker's working. Oh, there we go. How cute is that? I know, I like the cute photo. This is what I got to go and see before COVID, which is I got to go to all the labs and to see the research in action. Now, what was really, really important to me is I had read a lot of the research. I'm freaky. I even did it this morning. I woke up and I checked my research alerts to see what research had come out overnight, and even before I get out of bed, I'm reading research. I understand. Social media is not my issue. Research papers are massively my issue. But I'd read a lot of the research, and but then I got this opportunity to go and actually spend time at the labs. Now that was way more, so I'm a people person. I learn from others. Reading is hard for me, so reading scientific papers is even harder for me. So going and sitting with these people for 4 or 5 days was fantastic, and I got to see all these things. I also got to do all the tests that they would let me do. Yes. So they put me in an fMRI machine, got me to do one of the standard tests that the kids do. I got out and I said, oh, so how was that? And they went, well, your brain is interesting. And I went, what does that mean? And they went, it's just interesting. It just doesn't behave like everyone else's. And it's like, okay. So now I actually have learnt why that's really, really important and different. That I said, look, I think, and I was never diagnosed, that I had a reading issue. It may have been dyslexia when I was younger. And they went, that makes more sense because your brain has worked its way around the problem and it's now connected itself differently, which is why I now understand that I experience the world very differently to everyone else. So do you. Because we are all musically trained, we fundamentally experience the world around us incredibly differently to everybody else. Has anyone been called oversensitive? Yes. Has anyone walked out of a staff meeting and someone says, oh, blah, 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 that's what happened, and you went, that's so not what happened. Yes. Oversensitive has a negative connotation to it. I would love you to walk out of this room with one thing, which is what you have inside your brain and the way music has trained it is not negative. You are in a heightened state of sensory processing all the time, which means you experience more of the world than other people. Think about the people, particularly the ones that you share your life with, particularly the ones you might share your house with. If they're not musically trained, they experience the world very differently to you. So it is, and it is an absolute superpower that I'd love you to walk away going, hey, you know what? My brain is super connected, highly synchronized, very, very consistent, to the point where I can do stuff that other people can't do, like superheroes. One thing to just walk away with, please, because it is absolutely true. So this is what I got to go and see. I got to see, these are in infant labs, so they have little, tiny little babies, and they have these little EEG caps that they put on their head, which is so cute. And then they do lots of research. I got to see lots of other research as well. I've been to 16 different labs. And I lob in for about 4 days. For the first 2 days, they look at me like I'm crazy because I'm not a neuroscientist, but yet I've read all their work. I've even read the obscure stuff that they didn't think anyone knew was there. And then after 2 days, they go, oh, she's pretty cool, she knows stuff. And then they start telling me the things that haven't been published. And that's the thing about scientific research. About 10% of what they do gets published. The other 90%, where truly the gold is, it doesn't see the light of day. So part of my job is to continue to work with those researchers to help people to see that research and to understand how to apply it. We now understand that music is how the brain hears all sound. Let me say that again in a different way. Every single sound we hear is processed by the brain as if it was music. Does that make sense? It's a really hard concept to get across to people who aren't musically trained. Usually the way I do it is to go, the garbage truck outside or the clanging of plates in the kitchen, the brain understands that for its musical qualities. What you're able to do is name those musical qualities. Does that make sense? But the brain never stops understanding all sound as if it was music. Our music processing network is active at birth. And we think, not that you can mess with babies and pregnant women, but very much, it's probably active from about the last trimester. So we hear all sound as music. From an advocacy point of view, this is really hard to go. Music is not that thing that comes out of the radio in the car. Music is all sound. So one of the most important ones is language is music to the brain. We understand all language as music, the rhythm and melody of language. Can you remember a time when we had phones that you couldn't see who was calling? You know that I have a daughter who's 13, and I showed her one of those, you know those ones that are the long and they have a stand on the bottom and you just pick them up like this? Yeah, she went, what the hell's that? It's like, it's a phone. She went, really? The way we often do it is, say we'd pick up the phone, and if it's someone from our family and they said hello, we'd know who they were. Does that make sense? Yeah. So language we have an auditory signature for everything. What's the funny thing is, if it was, you picked up the phone and it was your mum, they would say hello, but you'd also know what mood she was in. Doesn't work with dads. Mums, you go, right, okay, she's in one of those moods, okay. So that's what I mean by language and music. We hear all of that stuff that's in there. What we also now understand is that, well, it's a funny evolutionary question, is did the brain make music in order to develop? Because we had music before we had language. We used to grunt and we used to have patterns of sounds that communicated information. From that grew this thing called words and sentences and everything else that we had, but we had music first, which is why when someone has a traumatic brain injury, we take them back to music in order to learn how to speak again. So we're going back to our first language, which is, where is he? Song. Yeah, you. Our first language is song. Our last language is song. It's really, really important to try and get our heads around that idea. Music learning is then that question of, why do we have it? Why did we create this thing? And there's a big argument for the fact that we started with music and the brain went, hey, this is a really cool thing in our brain. If we use it more, our brain will grow. So music lives in the oldest part of our brain. I know that sounds weird, but we didn't start with this thing we have in there now. We started with a very small one and then it got bigger and bigger and bigger. The last bit is this bit at the front of our head, which contains our executive function. So when we're sick, we're tired, we need to go to the toilet, we haven't eaten, that's when all this stuff at the front goes, now I'm not going to work anymore. But the music stuff keeps working the whole time. So music learning is an activity and a unique activity that no other part of we haven't found another one that does it. It uses more of the brain in a more synchronised and simultaneous way than any other activity that we do. Hello, my 6-year-old. Oh, thank you. Go.
Slight tangent, but because you said it's based on the executive function,
Yep.
how music's processed, how does that affect people that have ADHD and how they process
Okay, so good question. So the question is about ADHD and how does it affect it. ADHD, so we have this amazing triangle, which is our auditory, visual and motor cortices. So it's our sensory development triangle. Anyone who's in early childhood goes, well, that's all my job is to connect those three things together. What we now understand, well, and 14-year-old boys, whichever way you want to go. What's interesting is this model, which they found studying musically trained kids, they went, oh, hang on a second. This connects to everything, including ADHD. So what they now understand about that triangle is that the information going around the triangle, like if it was you or me or anyone who doesn't have ADHD, I imagine it going all synchronized, all together, not a problem. In ADHD, it starts like that, and the timing goes out. Which is, if you've ever watched a child with ADHD try and clap a beat, they start fine, and then it just goes all over the shop. So what music does, and why, this is one of my why does it work things. I used to get kids coming into my classes in Year 7, and some of them would come in with a type of report to say they've been diagnosed with ADHD. Also, hypersensitive to sound, don't put them on anything loud. And I'd go, no. Big drum, get on that, and keep the beat. And I knew it would work every single time, but I didn't know why. What I now understand from the research is that by putting them on a drum and forcing them to do something consistent, I'm getting them to do something outside the body, which is helping this internal inconsistency to get more consistent. Does that make sense? Which is why primary school is great for this. When they're in the Year 4 class, ADHD, can't concentrate, throw things around, can't finish off any piece of work, come into music and they concentrate for 45 minutes. And if the classroom teacher ever sees them, they go, what have you done? Magic? And I go, no, music. Welcome to my world. Because it's helped them to have that consistency to concentrate. So then so I've again worked backwards with a lot of teachers to go, get them to do a consistent thing and then ask them to do a bit of a task. Go back to the consistent. So often even having a drum or a sound or moving fingers, don't matter. It has helped them to then concentrate in class. So this is why music as a therapy to lead to an educational outcome, which is improving academic performance for ADHD, is so powerful and so useful. Again, music therapists, hello at the back, will know that as well. But what I like is the idea of how do we transfer that across. Does that make sense? Yes, I got lots of those. Hello.
Sorry, all the talk of neurodiversity got me really excited and reminded me of a student that I had once. He was in his 20s and he came to me to do singing lessons.
Mm-hmm.
Because he didn't like music and he wanted to. So he was really concerned that he wasn't connecting with other people
Yeah.
who didn't like music.
Yeah.
And he really liked Minecraft music. And what I noticed about it, he could remember all the words.
Yeah.
But he couldn't describe any emotion in it.
Yeah.
I'd be like, so what do you feel in this bit? And
Yeah.
he'd be like, nothing. Like he couldn't get any feeling from music.
Yeah, which is that interesting. So one of the things with ADHD, it crosses over to autism. And I feel like now everything's a spectrum now, you know. But I feel like autism and ADHD run into each other at some point. And you get those interesting humans who do experience the world in a particular way. It's not that, what we now understand is that it's not that he didn't feel emotions, but the ability to identify that emotion and then tag it with a word is just too far. So part of what music does, because it is that thing that dives straight into us, it's a really fascinating thing that music bypasses every logical thought we've got. Think about, so grief is a great one, sorry to bring it up, but you know, when you hear a piece of music and you're in a grief state anyway, and it will just make you go, and now I'm going to cry uncontrollably. It's that thing that bypasses absolutely everything that we've got because it's in the oldest part of our brain. So what he was doing was kind of solving the problem, which is to go, I'm going to experience music and I'm going to try singing, which is my original language, to see if I can access that emotion, the feeling, to which then I could attach a word to it potentially. Does that make sense? So he was coming with the right thing. It's about but connecting that cycle for him to help him feel those things. Kids with autism struggle with the same thing. That same triangle we're talking about. Autistic kids have an overactive auditory visual side. So if one side of the triangle is overactive, what do you think is happening to the other side? Not a lot. Which is why autistic kids can't catch balls because the motor cortices is like not working. So what music does is help them connect that triangle again in a different kind of way. But they can't hear the prosody in speech. Prosody in speech is the meaning in speech. Which is why when they try and then speak, they sound to other kids and adults like they're being a bit rude because they can't hear, they can't put the right melody on top of the right words. Does that make sense? Yeah, so there's a whole bunch of things that sit in there for them. Good, okay. I'm wondering if we're going on a tangent and I don't mind. Is music learning important? It used to be. And it is still. But it used to be in everyone's mind because we used to have music and Latin and literature, and those are the three things that you learnt. As opposed to now, where we've got business studies and coding and how to cross a road. You know, all those sorts of things that we have in the curriculum. So the human evolutionary learning reason to have music has been lost. And my hope is that this research will bring it back and help people understand. Remembering that we are most often talking to people who have no experience of musical training. I use the word training. I know that sounds strange. It's the word they use in the research. They don't, and music education to me has a whole bunch, it's a whole nother field of research. So I use the word musical training. You also might have noticed I'm not using the word musician. Who here, I love doing this, bunch of music teachers, who here considers themselves a musician? Yeah, not everyone. Do you do music for a living? Yeah, so aren't you a musician? It's a strange thing. It's a really strange thing. If I said musician and you think immediately what does that mean, what would be the characteristics of a musician? What? What was that? Go! Easy. Paid for a gig, absolutely. Well done. Yep.
It's not getting paid, it's just that you are, you talk about like student musicians, right? They're not getting paid. I've got this great musician in my class, right?
Yeah.
It's just someone that plays.
Yeah. Yes, someone who plays well? Okay, you're all being very nice. So, live performance, yes. So those are usually the three. Someone who does it on stage, someone who gets paid for it, and someone who's exceptionally good at it. Or yes, but it's a weird thing that the label musician is uncomfortable. And it took me so long to figure this out because I kept using it because in the research they use musicians versus non-musicians. And then I went, hang on a second, this word's not working for us. So I use musically trained because a bus driver can be musically trained. A surgeon can be musically trained. Not very often, but a minister of education could be musically trained. It's something that leads into something else. Rather than, because when I talk to parents, I say, why should children learn music? And they say, to follow a musical career. And it's like, that's the narrowest version of why we do what we do. What about if every child should learn music to become a good human? And then they go, oh, I'd like one of those. Again, if they've got a 14-year-old boy. So that's what I'm trying to do, is break apart that idea. There's a whole bunch of myths sitting underneath and misunderstandings sitting underneath the beliefs about music education. This research will help us out of that, I think. Hello.
Quite a few of us deal with the issue of having students in our class, well, thinking about music as a subject as, oh, it's the fun subject.
Yes.
And would you be able to send your research to everybody?
Yes, but you know what? The more powerful thing is for you in that moment to say, absolutely, music makes us feel really strong emotions. Good, bad, sad, angry, elation, blah, blah, blah. The learning of music is a different thing altogether, and it grows your brain. Would you like a bigger brain? Which is a really great question for kids. Because they go, yeah. And you go, right, learn music, and this is why. So, this is again another misunderstanding. We've gone off tangent, I love it. The misunderstanding for me sits with, music comes out of the radio, it makes me feel good, therefore learning a musical instrument will have the same impact, and they're totally different activities. So we need to be better at saying music listening, music experience, which to me is watching someone play live music, and then music learning. And I use music learning because it covers everything. It covers a prison choir, it covers music therapy, it covers learning violin, it covers singing in a rock band. It's everything. Rather than music education. I get really worried. It pulls me down, that word. She's writing furiously. I think I did an okay job. Okay. My clicker definitely is not wanting to work. Ooh. All right. I mentioned the music industry before. It doesn't matter if you're a classroom teacher, an instrumental teacher, you sell musical instruments, you sell recording equipment, there's all sorts of things. I think we get a little bit stuck in, I'm a classroom teacher, I'm an instrumental, this is the bit that I do, as opposed to going, hang on, we're all working with the same students. We are all different touch points for not only that student, but also that parent, also that school leader. And what I mean by that, do you guys use the word principal? Okay, head of school or principal? Okay, good. You know, we're all touch points for that experience, for that student. So if we thought about ourselves as an industry, again, it might broaden our thinking around. How could we connect better? And often I know with our school, we have an instrumental music supplier who we recommend that this is where we go to grab your musical instrument. We work with them about how they can help their sort of educational sell. They're a business, they're there to make money. But if they know more about this research, then the parent is getting the same information from us that they're getting from them about the same experience. Do you get what I mean? Yeah, okay. I would add into this philanthropists as well. I work with a lot of philanthropists. They're an interesting bunch of people. But getting them to understand the deeper reasons of the money, what the money they are giving is providing as an opportunity, but also how to do it wisely. That's a really important thing. If anyone's working with philanthropists or would like to, just come and see me later. Do we get in our own way? Yes, yes we do. Who's ever said, why can't they understand what I do? Yep, why don't they get it? Why aren't they listening? Has anyone ever had that? Even if you haven't said it out loud, just had it internally as a quiet feeling that's not so nice. Yeah. I think we forget, and like I said, we are musically trained. Our experience of the world, and remember, how long have you been musically trained for? Oh my God, yes, we might as well be, and we are, elite sports people. We've done it since we were incredibly young, and we've dedicated our lives to it. We're a little bit narrow. And this is just my theory, music teachers tend to have music teachers as friends. True? I think it's because we lead such unsociable hours that the only people we can have friends with are music teachers because they're leading the same unsociable hours. We tend to get a little bit narrow and a little bit blinkered. And I think one of the things to think about when we're connecting is to go, how can I help the person in front of me who's never held a musical instrument, who actually had a deep desire when they were young to learn a musical instrument and they were told they were not musical, or even worse, they were the kid in the choir that said, stand there, open your mouth, but don't sing, which is called an art scar. And art scars are so present. And be very careful if you ever touch one with another person, because they're like the softest part of skin ever. And people don't even know they've got it. So understanding where is that person coming from. They don't hear the world the same way that you do. They don't have the discipline that you have to learn your instrument. They don't get the wonderful experiences you get every single time you walk into a music classroom. They don't have that. So how can you help them understand what it is that you do and the value of what you do? The other thing within our community, who's really good at putting on a super good concert? Who's really good at making it look really good? The man up the back's like, me, all me. Great. Except, this may be part of how we get in our own way. We put on the shiny, wonderful, looks like nothing goes wrong concert. We know it all does. Who's had the stuff go wrong backstage, like the bent trombone and the vomiting child? Yeah, there we go. We're so good at covering that stuff up, aren't we? We're so good. So, but if you're sitting in the audience watching, if you're sitting in an audience, you're doing it right now, as soon as you sit down, you go, entertain me. That's exactly what we do. And we're all the same. So a parent sitting down going, oh, okay, I've got 3 hours of this. How, at what point can I sneak a look at my phone? And they're waiting to be entertained, and you're showing them perfect. But is that where the actual power of what you do is? No, it's in week 3 of beginner brass band and rehearsal in about minute 35 when all their lips are about to go, but they finally can keep a beat together. But we don't show that stuff because we're taught not to. Don't come to rehearsal, it's not quite ready yet, wait till the performance. But I think we're getting in our own way by not showing where the power of what we do is, which is in the music learning process. How do we show that off? And how do we get people to understand? And how do we connect within ourselves across schools? Coming together like this is incredibly wonderful, because who feels like they're, or who is an only teacher in their school, or hardly gets to see teachers very much? You're very isolated. Yes, we lead a very, very isolated life. So connecting across is really important. Real connection, I always go by looks like, feels like, sounds like. How would real connection look within our community? First of all, catching up with people. And I know we go, we're time poor, I want to give all my time to my students. But you need to feed yourselves too. Seeing what's going on, checking out other bits of other people's concerts, you know, getting the sound connecting and going, look, here's my beginner brass band in week 4, and you can vaguely hear it's hot cross buns. And sending that little audio file off to a colleague and going, look what I did. Because every single time it's both a miracle and a mystery about how you get there. And it should sound like supporting each other. We are very good on a Friday night at having a glass of wine and then probably having the second glass of wine with our music education friends, who are the only friends we have because we lead terrible unsocial lives. And then going down into a rabbit hole of this is what can't be done. And what I'd love you to do, not just for yourselves but for other people, is to bring yourselves up. Not solve the problem, but say, what did you do? What was good this week? What did work? What was my little triumph? And actually noticing that, because as humans, we're not great at that. Here's one for you. As a client, who's got a student like this? Every single one of us has got one of these. Connecting across decision makers. Now, I use this as a big term because it's anyone who gets to make a decision about music education. That's not always the principal. Often the principal, do you have then deputy principals? Is that how it works? Okay. I love the principal who goes, I want a music program, I want to see choir and assembly, I want to see all these wonderful things. And then they throw the football of music education to the deputy principal who goes, I don't want this. And that can be a decision maker who often gets in your way. There are hidden decision makers. In a school, or instrumental, mostly in a school for classroom stuff, it's the timetabler. Yes. Should be the most creative person in the world who can work with time and figure out how everything can fit in. Most of the time, the least creative person in the world who knows how to use a spreadsheet, and that's it. They need your help. How can you connect with them? Because we are, if nothing else, very good at time, at managing time. And often we get less and less and less and less time, but have to produce the same outcome. We're very good at it. So help out the timetabler. If you're in secondary school, I don't know what the term would be. I would call it a careers advisor. Someone who advises students on the next steps outside of secondary school. Yes. I don't know if this happens here, and if there's one of these people in the audience, I apologise. Often, in the Australian context, it's a very senior, very experienced teacher who doesn't want to be in the classroom that much anymore, coming towards their end of their career. Have I spotted one? No. No. Sometimes, the worst version. However, that's not always it, but part of it is how they're informed about what's the purpose of music education. They can be a decision maker, but they're a hidden one. You need to figure out who they are. So part of connecting within and across, particularly across, is figuring out who actually holds the power or makes the decisions. And it's not always the person in charge. Often it can be somebody else. As I said, we don't always help ourselves because who grew up wanting to be or coming into being a music teacher and went, yes, I would love to be an advocate. That's definitely my job. Fantastic. You're two of many that don't want to do it. It's like, that's not my primary job. And I think whose skin crawls just a little bit when you feel you have to justify the work you do? Yeah, it's a really uncomfortable feeling. I'd love you to contemplate that the connecting across could be not feeling uncomfortable about doing that role, but saying the better I do this part, the better my job's going to be, the more I'm going to get. the easier my job will be. Who just wants their job to be a little bit easier? You don't want the world, you just want a little bit easier. So part of that is, again, who's the person you're talking to and how do you help them understand? And what's more, does teaching a musical instrument take one lesson and then you're done? Yeah, beginner violin, no. It doesn't. Advocacy is the same. You have to keep going at it. You have to keep changing. We used to think cigarettes were good for us. And doctors used to advertise them. Yeah, do you all remember that they're black and white pictures now? Yeah, and they go, smoking is fantastic for you. It helps your breathing, blah, blah, blah. And then how long has it taken us? Decade, another decade, to get to the point where it's like, now we've got, open wounds and ulcers sitting on the outside of cigarette packets. That's how long that advocacy took to change the mind. So look at it as a long-term goal. Look at it as a work in progress, that every time you get the opportunity to say something, you do. Or every time you get the opportunity to counter what someone said, as opposed to going, I can't believe you think that. That's an opportunity too. But doing it in a respectful and a compassionate way. You are very, very good at manipulating others' emotions. You are. Because you understand how to do it and you pick up more than anybody else about how someone else is going. So use that as an opportunity to say, I love this one. Can I tell you this is an anecdotal story. Yeah? We good? Okay. You have 4 terms like us, don't you? Yeah, so end of term 3, do a lot of you do your big concert? Yeah, so you've just come out of the pain and suffering that is 3 terms of work. I've done the same thing. Concert's gone well, 190 kids on stage, nothing went terribly wrong, it was all fine. You're packing up at the end. So in your hand is a stand and a chair, because you know what? We can't help ourselves. We know the quicker that it gets packed up, the quicker it's all over and finished. So we have this tendency to pack up ourselves. That's the point where a parent comes running towards you. And this is what they say. Amazing, well done. You've done it again. Fantastic concert, well done. Just by the way, Sally's not having fun playing saxophone anymore, so she's not going to come back next term. Thanks very much, well done, bye. At that point, I know you want to throw the music stand, but don't. That's a point of advocacy, that's a point of connection. Put the chair down, put the stand down, call the parent back, if you can, because they're pretty quick. And then talk, and I do a lot of asking questions. That's really sad to hear. Sally's doing really well. Tell me more about what's happening at home. And honestly, I ask questions because my brain is going, oh my God, what am I going to say? It gives me time to think. And also time to grab a piece of thought research to go, oh, by the way. And finding out more about what's happening. That's a way of connecting, because in the end, you're actually asking more from the parent, because the parent's done it at that particular time. Why? Why do you think? To avoid. They know they're going to disappoint you, but they feel it's the right thing because you've taught Sally for 7 years to then come at that point to say, I know I should do this personally, but I know it's going to upset the music teacher. Do you get what I mean? Yeah, that's a point to say, what's happening for them, what's going on at home, that, what's the not fun part? Because that not fun bit is just such a coverall for everything. Oh, we're having arguments about practicing. She's got too much, doing too much with cricket, all these sorts of other things that are going on for her. Okay, let's see if we can solve this problem together. Meanwhile, mayhem is occurring around you because there's pack up, but that's okay. The moment is you need to connect with that parent. And suddenly it becomes a conversation about the child, not about the musical activity. So for me, music learning is the process that we use to grow a human. The music is secondary. Yes, it's the work we do, but to connect with others, I think we need to go, I'm growing humans here, let me help grow that human with you, and music's just the tool I'm using for it. It's a little bit freeing, just a little bit, because it's now all about the child who you truly do care about. Who cares about their students? All of you. Who doesn't like some of them, but they still care about them? There we go. Oh, am I going for time? All right. This is the question I'm posing all around Australia and now in Scotland and England and Ireland and Wales, because they all want to get in on this, interestingly. What would happen as music educators if we all sang, and I know I'm using a pun here, but we sang from the same song sheet? Or not even the same, a similar one. If we had a campaign of information to whoever we get to speak to and whoever we get to write to and whoever we get to advocate to, that had a similar kind of, where are we trying to go to? What's our heading part? Now for me, in Australia, it's really simple. A quality, sequential, ongoing music education for every Australian child. Not hard. I've got 10 years to do it. That's what I've given myself. I'm 5 years in. No, I've got another 10 years to do it. That'll be 15. Okay. But it's sort of going, okay, how can I help others understand, help them honestly solve the problems of music education? And some of them are just about implementation. How do I make it work? That's actually more of what I'm finding. They go, yes, we want music education in school. We want it for every child. Tick, 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 tick. We don't know how to do it. Excellent. I can fill all those ticks in for you and help you to figure out how to do it. And so can you. We know how to solve problems. If anything, we're amazing problem solvers. So how can we get to that point? How can we tick that off? Can't read that because mine is... Another part is, how can we open ourselves up to hearing all opinions? And I put music there, but you know what I mean. When an opinion is not one that you hold or is counter to the value of what you do, how can we be open to hearing them and then working with that person as opposed to working maybe against them or, even worse, dismissing them? How often, have you ever felt dismissed? Probably quite often. It's not a nice feeling. So how can we actually turn that around to saying, instead of dismissing that person as not understanding what you do, how can you connect with them little by little by little in a campaign from going doctors with smoking through to we don't think smoking's great anymore? How can we move from one point to the other? And how can we make it an ongoing campaign? These things don't change overnight. They take years. It's taken 5 years since I started this work, and it's now, scary but true, next year is 10 years since the TED education video came out with a little bass player. It's taken that long, and this year is the first time I've seen news reports, I've heard ministers, I've heard principals speak about, they can finish this sentence. Every child in my school or my state or my wherever should learn music education because, and they can finish the sentence. It's taken that long. And it's taken that long of just keeping going at it. But it can happen because all of a sudden, the message that I'm helping to send out isn't one coming from me anymore, they're bringing it back to me. And that's where I think we need to get to, because I think we're on the cusp, I hope in Australia, of starting to change things. The other plus for us, and I know this is a theme here, literacy and numeracy has not got better through doing more literacy and numeracy. It's taken them 3 goes. So first of all, we have NAPLAN. You have standardised literacy and numeracy testing? Has it got a name? No, you don't? But it comes and goes. Excellent, because that's what literacy and numeracy should be. We have NAPLAN, which is, I don't even know what it stands for. I do, vaguely. But it's basically, we have kids in year 3, year 5, year 7 and year 9 do standardised literacy and numeracy testing. First 3-year stint, we're not doing as well as the rest of the world. Let's change the literacy, let's do more literacy. So suddenly it started to suck up more of the timetable in primary school. Next 3-year stint, we're still not doing well. If anything, we're worse. So now let's just teach literacy and numeracy for the same amount of time, but differently. Final 3 years that we're into now, they've just got, so we've had 10 years now. Final one, still not good. Wow, maybe we're missing the point. Ding, 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 ding. Music and literacy are connected, maybe we should be doing some of that. So we finally got to that point. So there is light at the end of the tunnel, says me, who's in a hoping process. I think we need to broaden the reasons for learning music. Yes, music is a wonderful art form, and yes, we should learn it, and yes, every child should have the opportunity. That argument's not holding water. We need to go to also, it helps produce a human, and I don't believe we should have one or the other. And in Australia, at least, there's been a really strong, and there was a strong advocate prior to me, who was like, music's good, there should be no other reason. But that's just not moving the needle. And all I want to do is move the needle. For kids like me, who music changed their life trajectory. So I try and have two arguments coexisting, which is music is an amazing art form and everyone should do it, and music helps produce amazing humans. And we can have both of those together. You need to personally sit with that and figure out where you are on that spectrum. I get trolled. I don't understand why. I've got particularly one in England who just hates me. And she's very well educated too, but I am the devil. And she strongly believes that I am corrupting all of music education for every single child everywhere by bringing out this research. And that's perfectly okay for her to have that opinion. But music's not getting better in England, and music's starting to turn. Music education and learning is starting to turn in Australia. That's the bit I care about. Okay, so wherever you sit in that, just try and grapple with where you are on that spectrum. I will finish. I do apologise that I'm late. I'm going to put this up on all of my presentations, but if you'd like to look at the stuff I work with teachers is called Bigger, Better Brains. Bigger, Better Brains was the title of my PhD. And the reason is because I kept, and this was even before, digital writing on stuff, I kept writing in the columns of the papers I was reading, musicians' brains are bigger, musicians' brains are better. This is the work I do with teachers. What it is to help you to have materials to share, to do that advocacy so you don't have to do the hard work. And also so that you feel authentic and comfortable and confident to talk about this research in a way, because it's going to be more powerful coming from you than coming from me. I'm really useful if you need to wheel in the big guns with someone with doctor on the front of their name. But actually the person who will change things are you. You're the advocate in your own school. Also, in 2019, look how that turned out, I was going to be coming here to deliver a course, which is where we get to work together for 2 days. I would like to come back next year. So if there's anyone who has a school who would like to discuss hosting and would like to discuss... Excellent. I did one in... slight tangent. I was in Scotland in June. And why Scotland, you might say? Scotland had this amazing thing that happened. So they have a day off on their election day. So, I know, cool. So they can all go and vote, and they have it on the same day. Anyway, what this group had managed to do is they got every single party who was running for government in Scotland to agree to the same manifesto, that if they got in, they would do 3 things. The big one was free instrumental lessons to every Scottish child. Oh. I know. So they had the election, and it didn't matter who got in because they were all had agreed that they would put this in. I didn't know about this, but I presented by Zoom to one of their things, and they sent me all the materials they'd sent to the ministers, and my name was all the way through it. I'm like, I'm glad I've been helpful, but I didn't even know. So I've continued that relationship with Scotland, because now, of course, they've got to the point where they're into their free lessons, and they've gone, this is a little bit difficult. We've got some problems. So I was over there, but I was also teaching, I taught the course while I was over there. I taught it to 160 people at once, which is the biggest thing I've ever done. But has anyone been to Glasgow? Amazing city. Yes. So there's a train station in the middle of Glasgow, and there's these leftover train. So imagine they're the train tunnels, but there's 7 of them together, and they've concreted them over, and it's now like a venue. But it used to be the biggest nightclub in the Northern Hemisphere. So all these music teachers, 160, 70 of them, walked in, and of course they'd been there as the nightclub. So they were like, I did a gig over there, I vomited over there, I did this. It was the biggest party I have ever had. And they also had party lights up, so it was all like colours and it changed. It was wild. Anyway, I'd love to do that here if you've got any place like that. But a school is a little bit easier. I've already signed 1 book this morning, which is lovely to know that someone is using it. It's a book written, if you haven't seen it yet, it just covers the research from 0 to 18. But what I've tried to do is write it for you as well as write it for parents. So it starts with, there's lots of stories, there's lots of examples of what happens behind the scenes, and then the science is weaved into that. So if it is useful for you to have that as ways of speaking about music learning, or if you can pass it on to someone. I've had quite a few people get me to sign ones and they've slipped it across the desk to their principal for Christmas. Yeah, Christmas present just for you. Bit of reading. You know, however you want to use it, I don't mind, as long as it is useful, and that's all I've wanted to ever do for you guys, is to be useful. Thank you. I'm really looking forward to today, and I'm very, very excited to be here, and I would love to be able to come back. So thank you very much.